Alright, can we take your seats please so that we can resume. The next presenter is Mr. Nersa. If you could please come forward. In your seats, you will see that you've got some earphones there for interpretation. Make use of those whilst you are still in the room, but leave them as soon as leave them in your seat when you are leaving later on. Please don't take them away. Mr. Nersa? Nersa, you please raise your right hand. Can someone adjust? Okay. Alright, do you solemnly declare that the facts you're going to share with this panel today will be the truth and the whole truth?
Yes, I will.
Alright, please state your name and the organization you're coming from.
This is Nersa. I'm from the Oslo Public Steering Committee. I'm from Durban, and I'm representing the community, the poor of Durban.
Alright, go ahead, please.
So, thank you, Madam Chair and the panel, for giving us the opportunity to present here. And since the National Energy Regulator was promulgated, I have attended all the hearings. And I just want to say that the hall has been packed of the people who are really concerned about Eskom's application for the tariff increases, but more importantly, to expand the coal-fired power stations in South Africa. And that is why this notion that the community is not concerned needs to be dispatched. People are concerned about the power station that we were supposed to own. But since the energy regulator has been hosting these hearings, we have frequently heard from Eskom and their presentations. And their presentations has been filled with untruths. And the truth can never be hidden. And today, we've come across the truth. And we've heard Eskom yet this morning. In between my trying to run in and out to try and sort out my problems and to deal with the problems I'm affected with, I managed to get the gist of Eskom's argument. And the gist of Eskom's argument has been that they can fool the people of South Africa, the citizens of the country, and get away with it. They certainly believe that. Else the argument that they presented today should have been a change argument, should have been different, should have been given the history of what has happened the past few years in South Africa. And what the Zono Commission in the last 2 weeks has exposed, that Eskom has been captured, that there's been looting and stealing of the money of the citizens and taxpayers of this country, is no doubt anymore. And that all the applications over the years, where they've asked for 35%, for 30%, for 24%, 26%, 20%, 18%, has been a lie. And that has been revealed here today, where they've come here and said they're looking for money from us as the customers, for money for 2011, since 2011. Surely that is a lie, and that they've got the money already in 2011. If all is right, and that is a record of the National Energy Regulator, then we're all aware that Eskom has been asking for money for the maintenance of all these plants that they've come here today and asked for once again. Is that not the truth? Or have we been lied to in the past? We're all aware of the big loans and massive loans that Eskom has taken from the World Bank and recently from the China Bank. the China Development Bank, that our children and the future of our children and the generations that have to come will be paying for it. More importantly, all those increases that have been given over these years, there is a record of the top CEOs, the top managers that have got handshakes, golden handshakes of 30 million rand. Is that not the facts? And we see ESCOM today, and some of the people that are presenting today with ESCOM have been here for a long time, presenting the same old story of ripping the customers off and wanting more money. Is that not the facts? And Madam Chair, I share your frustration. And having been here for many years, and I understand what you have to say today. And when I was sitting there at moments, the Iron Lady is speaking up, and I thought, wow, wow, is that what's not needed? We need people to not be afraid to speak up. And there's more going to be revealed with the Zondo Commission. Surely those billions of rands that have exposed many for the past decade that we've been involved has exposed the huge corruption, corporate capture, misuse of money, and the lack of maintaining the power generation. ESCOM was given the money and the opportunity to roll out the renewable energy program in this country. Well before the COP17 here in Durban at this ICC. And what happened? They failed. They failed desperately, and they didn't even come back to the country and the people of this country and tell them what do they do with the money. I hope I have about 15 minutes to talk about my presentation. ESCOM's attempt today to influence you, Madam Chair, and your panel to approve a tariff increase of 29%, paid for mainly by the largest customer pool of poor and working class, will be met by those people, stiff opposition. Stiff opposition by people in this country. Those adversely affected citizens must insist that Nersa, the Energy Minister Jeffrey David, and other leaders of our government do not grant these fat cats any more increases in electricity tariff pricing. They must recover the money that has been stolen. The money that they've misused must be directly, individually accountable for. Not only do we want poor and working people to get a large free basic electricity subsidy, we promise equality to the vast majority of poor people in this country, our people who vote. Currently only 50 kilowatts per household per month. We insist on a radical change in how electricity is produced, and we insist that those who are party to the corruption which has undermined this once impressive parastatal be prosecuted. They must be held accountable and be prosecuted. They must be put in jail like any other criminal that steals. Lenders who are party to ESCOM's problem should also be forced to the negotiating table, where they should accept lender liability on the 420 billion debt, so that we as innocent consumers are not compelled to keep paying for ESCOM's management's mistakes. We need change, Madam Chair, and change is good. ESCOM has consistently turned to ordinary customers, like they've done today. And I'm glad we all here heard the truth. To extract more money, resulting in millions of unemployed people, pensioners and child grant recipients being disconnected from the state. Future unaffordability. Women especially are disadvantaged. What would their caregiver roles when they must resort to dirty energy, coal, paraffin and wood? That pollutes their dirty and lungs, and while the agency lives in a lap of luxury. Municipalities themselves have added their own increases, and they have been ruthless in carrying out disconnection, especially in the Tegweni. Results include war with residents over illegal connections. That is a constant thing in the media. Children are getting burnt, children are dying. But while the fat cats are living in a very lap of luxury. And many residents live in darkness for years. And yet the major users who profit from subsidized energy, ESCOM has not responded to the question. They never even presented the difference in tariff pricing. They never presented it. Why? To the major users of subsidized energy. Who are they? They've got their offices in London, New York, and Melbourne. KZN is the province most affected by this kind of redistribution. Since BHP Billiton, South 32, smelters in Richards Bay received long-term contracts. And yet we heard today there's no, with the coal. Limiting the cost of power to 12 cents a kilowatt, less than a tenth of what we pay. The privileged companies in the energy-intensive users group not only export profits but create more jobs in their own countries, while ESCOM is shedding thousands of jobs at its own facilities since there is no plan for a just transition for permanent and contract workers alike. That is what we know, that ESCOM is going to shed jobs. We know that, it's been in the media. That is not even talked about. So they want more money, billions of rand, but where's the jobs? What is the unemployment issues? Nothing's been discussed. Where are the prices in this country with climate change? Caused locally more by ESCOM than any other single institution on this continent, affecting everyone. Climate change is worsening droughts that are today debilitating Free State and Northwest Province maize production, and that keep Cape Town on water restriction. Climate change is causing ever more extreme storms, which also keep ESCOM's coal supplies too wet to burn. They never spoke about that. There's been a lot of rain, there's been storms all over. So they can't even burn the coal, they don't talk about that. They don't present that. We've had a lot of blackouts all over this city, all over this province. And every time there's a Nersa hearing, I wonder why we have all these blackouts. That is to hold us to ransom, to threaten us, and to tell us that you have to pay more money and you won't get no more blackout. It's the worst kind of deviousness that we have seen. And that needs to come to a stop. We have a terrible noise, this is all going to get worse. People are already dying of hunger and using 1,500 as the upper bound poverty line. 2/3 of our society is poor, unemployed. On the state grant, then we have to pay. ESCOM keeps rising. ESCOM plans to increase coal-fired power stations, especially the final turbines at Matupi and Kusili, plus 2 more independent power producer plants, not to mention the proposed 4,600 megawatt Chinese plant, proposed for Messina, and to rely more on fracking shale gas in the face of the government's commitment to abide by the Paris Climate Agreement signed in December 2015. ESCOM is Africa's biggest emitter of the greenhouse gases that cause climate change, and yet still want to continue increasing tariffs to increase emissions by expanding Matupi and Kusili. More than 6.2 billion, which is 86 billion rand, is owed to just the 2 main banks. The World Bank in Washington, 3.75 billion, lent in 2010, and China Development Bank in Beijing, 2.5 billion in 2018. That made ESCOM money for Matupi and Kusili. Corruption I've already spoken about is rife in each loan. As you're aware, the World Bank, Hitachi was prosecuted by the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission, which charged Hitachi a 300 million rand fine because of the corruption that was involved in the loans and the money given to Chancery House. Just as Transnet is going back to the corrupt suppliers such as China South Rail to renegotiate, we should be demanding that Hitachi pay ESCOM for corrupting our ruling party, and that the banks who knew about this over the past decade also be held liable. This is odious debt that simply should not be repaid. The basic problem is that ESCOM chose to build these 2 extremely expensive, carbon-intensive and corruption-riddled power plants, and we heard it from them today. Their cost is coming in at more than 3 times more than the original 60 billion rand budgeted for. Their systems continue to fall apart. We'll have more money for maintenance. They need massive amounts of water to cool the turbines, in spite of Matupi being in a water-scarce Limpopo, and they were warned by us. What we should have done long ago is to change from the harmful and destructive development path to a much more cleaner, renewable, sustainable solar, wind and energy. If those energy sources were tapped by ESCOM instead of the very expensive independent power producers, which have no interest in a just transition for coal industry workers, then we would be happy to negotiate higher price so that in the future we have a cleaner environment, we slow climate change, and we gain a just transition for affected workers. We still need a high amount of free basic electricity, at least triple the current level, so that energy is affordable to poor and working people. All of these suggestions, demand and criticism have been suggested to Nersa in the past, ESCOM government and the banks by the city and by other groups as we are here today. Since even before our campaign against the World Bank loan in 2010, naturally we considered Nersa in the past to be deaf to our concerns, and today was the first time we've had a real Nersa, and Nersa standing up for the people, and Nersa saying no, and Nersa saying no, and Nersa asking one question, and we were happy about it, and I was in my heart, in my body trembling when I sat there at the back. Hey, where did Nersa wake up? This is what we want. This is what we want. Naturally, therefore we demand, Madam Chair and the panel, it's not enough to have public hearings in only one city, in KZN. People are affected throughout this province. It's not enough to leave it to groups like ourselves to bring in the community. Because today they heard, at least they are here, their concerns are serious, are important, and they need to be considered. This needs much more than what has been done to bring them in. There needs to be a much more advertising, a much more of thought put into the process. How do we get communities? And there's millions of people all over South Africa that are affected, and it can't be at one city. And I know you can yawn, sir. You can yawn as much as you want to yawn, because you think my presentation is thing. But I want to say to you now, we yawn every day. We yawn every day. So we're demanding public hearings in all cities, not just the main metro.
Mr. Desa, you are left with 2 minutes.
Sure. A remediation plan for the misappropriation of funds, not only by the corrupt companies and individuals involved, but by all their facilitators, including the people present here from ESCOM, including the private sector finance and suppliers who have made out like bandits. Clean, renewable energy sources and battery storage systems that are reliable, that are sufficient strength, at least 20 amperes per household, and will foster an environment to which people can live without harm. Renewable electricity generation that is socially owned, worker self-managed, and community control. Affordable energy that allows society to have a free lifeline, plus additional levels of energy to live decently as a basic human right. Democratic decision making on energy policies, as we have got to this level where we have a corrupt ESCOM, that allows for local government, that allows all people to have a say in the future of South Africa's energy choices. A decentralized energy system that allows for local government and people at a local level to be in control of energy rather than a centralized, costly and inefficient system. I thank you, Madam Chair.
For the presentation, I just want to check if the members of the panel, they have specific questions to just understand what is it that you would like Nersa to do, as well as what you would like ESCOM to do. Mr. Smak? Mr. Kiss?
Chairperson, thank you. Thanks for the presentation. I just would like to know specifically concerning the applications that are before us. What is the speaker's view regarding that? Thank you.
Mr. Foley, any question from your side? Okay. All right. Mr. Disa, if I may just get clarity, you mentioned that ESCOM failed to ban sufficient coal as it was expected from the decision, RCA decision. What should ESCOM do to account for banning less coal than expected? What is it that you want ESCOM to do to account for banning less coal than expected? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Our presentation is informed by various public community meetings in all the areas, in the townships. And it's a clear no increase should be granted to ESCOM at all. Nothing. And then to our view on the issue of what ESCOM should do in regard to coal burning, I think it's clear that we need to take people off the grid. ESCOM must carry out the rollout of renewable energy, solar, wind, and others. And they must do it, they must come and report. They must have a progress report of how long they're going to take to carry it out. They can't be, and they must be given specific time frame. So we start agreeing and abiding by the Paris Accord, where South Africa has signed that they will reduce their emissions. And we're all aware that coal and the burning of coal is the greatest emitter that causes climate change and the global warming that we're experiencing in the different climates. So we need to start taking the plunge and start creating and developing a just transition with the trade unions and with the people in this country, and start moving away from coal. There is no such thing as clean coal, and we know that coal is harmful. So our attitude towards that, Madam Chair, is that ESCOM must do the right thing and must start moving away from coal and start investing more in renewable energy and take their profits and have a plan that is set out for the next 5 or 10 years, so that South Africa can live up to its international commitments, but also live up to the commitment that people will live in a healthy and clean environment. And coal certainly can't do that. So our argument is clear. Let's move away from coal. Let's start developing plants, and let's tell our companies that
we've had the message. Thank you very much. We thank you for your time. I still give you permission to do that, because you're going to delay the time and in these proceedings. We appreciate that you are impressed by the views of Mr. Tessa, but please keep it to a minimum and so that it doesn't interrupt our proceedings. Thank you, Mr. Tessa.
Thank you so much.
All right, the next presenter is Salga. Can we have somebody from Salga to come and present? We have the name of Ntlantla Ngidi. I'm not sure if Ntlantla is here. Oh, okay. Mr. Ngidi, may you please raise your right hand? Do you solemnly declare that the facts that you're going to provide before this panel will be the truth and the whole truth?
I do.
Thank you very much. Please state your full name and your designation at Salga Ukupi Sanke Bogotwe.
Sorry about that, Chair. My name is Ntlantla Ngidi. I am the head of electricity and energy in Salga.
All right, please, you may start with your presentation.
Thank you, Chairperson. With your permission, Chairperson, I'm not going to go through presentation. Just want to talk through it. Just to save the time, there are a lot of questions that the panel asked ESCOM that also some of our concerns also in our presentation and in the consultation process between us and ESCOM. So what I'm going to do is just to concentrate on the key messages from Salga, representing the voice of municipalities, and also maybe there were questions that we were asked by the panel to respond to in writing, but I think I'll spend 5 minutes trying to respond to them, and I think there's no need for us to have questions down to respond them in writing. I think, Chairperson, I'm going to talk about the 2 applications and how Salga feel, or what's the Salga's position around the application. Obviously, we have been consulted by ESCOM as it is a requirement in the Municipal Finance Management Act that ESCOM must do consultation. We have consulted other about the two applications. We have asked questions to ESCOM. We have deliberated. I know that the panel also always have a concern around why there's a need of consultation if we come here again and oppose what ESCOM has to say when we have consulted each other. But I think what I want to explain is that the reason for consultation is not necessarily to agree on things, but it could help us not to come and stand here as government and oppose government. I think it could help if we improve the manner in which we consult each other, the manner in which we respond to each other on issues of clarity. I don't think it should be the case in the future that SACA should stand here and as a government entity and oppose another government entity. But obviously, SACA is carrying the mandates from municipalities, which are 40% of ESCOM's revenue. So obviously, there is a mandate of a customer that we are carrying. Obviously, we have to respond to that as the voice of local government. I'm going to start with the first application, which is for the RCA of over 21 billion. The stance from the municipalities is municipalities are not finding it easy and comfortable to support the RCA. There is a concern around ESCOM spending on the either on the fixed cost or the operational cost to actually get to a point where the allocated revenue that was allocated by Nersa is actually spent on ESCOM side, but there was shortage. So I think on our side, we would like the regulator to get into the bottom of this around really, are these costs that are borne by ESCOM really prudent or not? I think that's our concern on our side, because we come with a very generic view that, you know, ESCOM cannot punish us for the sales that they didn't realize. But I think it's fair that the regulator that has a mandate to actually look at this and analyze, actually do its job and make sure that this is not to the detriment of the customer, and also what is borne by customer, by ESCOM, needs to be allocated or recouped. But what is not prudent should not be allowed. I think this is SACA's position around the RCA. We will ask the question, what if this RCA on sales, especially on sales, were to be on the customer side, or were to benefit the customer? And our stance at this point in time, since all the municipalities that we present are reporting to us a negative growth of economy, there are municipalities that have no growth at all. There are municipalities, a lot of them, especially those that own ESCOM, that are failing by design because of the manner or because of the reason they were designed 20 or 30 years ago. One reason would be there was a town that was formed because of mines, and there are no mines anymore. There are just few commercial and small customers that are really not affording to pay. So that is also another government problem that we need to look at, the municipalities that are currently failing by design in their sustainability. We really have to look at that to revitalize the economies of these municipalities. Also, we support, I think it's one of the things that is in our detailed presentation that we made in Cape Town. We support the questions that were asked by the panel around, you know, we understand that ESCOM business is a fixed cost intensive business, but I don't think that should be necessarily the whole reason why the RCA should just be given. So we really have to look at the prudence of the issue. Then we go to the MYPD for the second application. There is a 15% over 3 years, or that is applied for by ESCOM. Already there are RCAs that a decision has been taken on. I think, if I'm not mistaken, my apologies if I'm incorrect here, but I think there is 4% plus minus 4% over 3 years that should be implemented parallel to the MYPD4. So already there's a heading 4%, together with this 15% that ESCOM is asking from a customer. And then I think what municipalities are saying in this one is, obviously 70% of the fixed cost of municipalities is bulk supply purchases. And what does this mean? It means that the pass-through that the customers, that the municipalities must implement to its customer, it's going to be difficult for municipalities to explain this to their constituencies, which is customer, because it might mean that they might be over 20%. If 50% is granted, the pass-through from the municipality side might be 20% or more. So there are those concerns that we need to really look at the realities, the economic landscape, how does it look like at this point in time, so as to have realistic, prices of electricity, and also take into consideration the levels of affordabilities that we have. We might be taking a risk of, going against the government policy by ever increasing prices. You might find out in the future, and it's already happening, Chairperson and members, there are customers who are connected to the grid, but they are not buying electricity. They can't afford it. So when DOE presents the access results, they look good, but do people have supply? That might be another story because of the affordability issue. So we really need to be cognizant of that. Whatever we're doing, we must be responsible and make sure that we don't go against the government policies of universal access to electricity. Also, we would ask that Nersa look at the issue of the realities around the forecasting of sales, also in the application as well. We would like Nersa to look at the issues of primary energy, especially around the contracting, and also maybe as a proposal that Nersa and ESCOM maybe has to engage government around the issues of the market factors and what affects the prices of the coal, because obviously ESCOM has presented and submitted that there are those market external factors that are affecting the issues around the pricing, which is out of ESCOM's control. So I think this is one thing maybe that needs to be looked at for future purposes to actually arrest issues that we're having around the prices that are not regulated around coal. But obviously, we would like Nersa to look deeply at the contracting side of things on the coal side from the ESCOM side. Around the IPPs, we would like also Nersa to get more information around the commercial operation of these plants, so that in this application we don't pay for something that is really not in the system yet. So we have to look at that to ensure that we are responsible in the prices that we charge the customer. Kabazela asked a question around what do we think is the optimal price for electricity as Sauga. I think I'm going to be honest with that. We don't have the numbers or percentages, and I think maybe the regulator would be best suited to do a future study around it. Look at, consider the economic landscape, look at the efficiency of the license itself, look at the issues around how does the bill program affect, or how has the bill program cost affected the prices. How has corruption, quantify the corruption that has taken place, how does it affect the tariffs that we should be paying to ESCOM? The issues of the whole debt of ESCOM, how did we get here? I think maybe for future purposes, the regulator, because the regulator has the mandate to get all the information it deems necessary from ESCOM. SANCA will not be in a position to actually try and do that, intensive study on ESCOM. I think Nersa would be best suited to do that. Look at all those line issues, the bill program, how did you get here with the cost and slippages, quantify that as opposed to the tariff that we are having now, the corruption, quantify the cost of corruption as opposed to what the customer must pay now. So we can look at that. We can even further look at what municipalities owe ESCOM and maybe Soweto and other townships. What does that quantify to what the kind of revenue that ESCOM is looking for and the tariff that the customer must pay? All of us must be responsible, even the municipalities must pay ESCOM, because we are all part of this. And we need to correct also, I think there was a question around the municipal debts. We must correct the narrative that is put in the media that the municipalities that don't pay ESCOM are the main problem for the ESCOM problems. I think we must say that the debt to ESCOM is part of the problem, but municipalities are not mainly part of the whole ESCOM problem. Eskom has a debt of about 419 billion, and I think 19 billion of that is what municipalities owe. So I think we must correct that narrative, because sometimes we find it from Eskom side in the media, which I think it's a bit unbecoming, Chairperson. What are we doing with the municipal debt as SALGA? One, SALGA, the stance of SALGA is we always make municipalities to be responsible and accountable. We have gone to the public and told them to pay Eskom. But further to that, we had to analyze and do a deep diving study to see which municipalities can pay Eskom and which municipalities can't. And with that, getting those results, we going to the table with Eskom and government to look at what kind of payment arrangements should be affordable for these municipalities to be able to pay Eskom. Also, we look at issues of debt restructuring, look at the debt that is recoverable, debt that is irrecoverable, because a large chunk of the debt that is owed by municipalities to Eskom is actually sitting in the municipalities' books, also owned by the customer. But the municipalities obviously will be, in the next few years or even now, forced to scrap some of that debt. So we must look at the Eskom debts also, look at what can be recovered from municipalities in the 20 billion that is owed by the municipalities. I think I did talk about consultation. There was a question around that. What's the need of consulting each other if we come here and oppose? But I think we still need to improve this upon ourselves. There was a question also that what can be done to make sure that we get into a place where SALGA will come in and support what Eskom has to do or what Eskom wants to say. But I think, as I said, I'm repeating myself, we have to improve maybe the manner in which we respond to each other in the consultations. The consultations are always good. We fight, constructive fights, and sometimes, especially for this kind of consultation, there were questions, a lot of them that could have given us maybe more technical, analysis to the application, but we couldn't do that because Eskom couldn't get a chance to respond to those questions, which we hope that the regulator will ask those questions as well. So I think with that also, I'm going to respond to the last part. Is there a problem with regulatory regime? I don't think so. I think maybe it needs a bit of improvement to look at the realities, to be flexible around considering the realities around sales. Sales are not going to be going up anytime soon. That is a reality. Sales are not going to go up anytime soon. We should have a realistic forecast. And if the regulatory regime will also take cognizance of that and be flexible enough to respond to realities, I think we'll crack it. And also maybe one of the SALGA recommendations were also, let's look at the performance-based regulation so that we get more accountability on the cost that Eskom bears in actually producing electricity and supplying it. Thank you, Chairperson. With that, I must say and reiterate that the municipalities, they were not comfortable with the two applications, and that will be the end of my presentation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ngidi, for your presentation and for taking the time to relook into the questions asked by the regulator and provide responses to those questions. I just want to check if there's any specific question from the members of the energy regulator. Mr. Foley.
Thanks, Chair. Mr. Ngidi, I just want to clarify at the start. So, in your slides that we have here, you say you don't support the RCA, so I assume that means you would like it to be scrapped. But in your second last slide in the pack we have, you essentially say you entrust Nersa to make the right decision. I just wanted to check, is that you trust Nersa, because I don't think you can entrust us to do something. So can you just clarify? And then kind of an overall question from me is, the thing that sprang to mind as you've presented for the second time is, so what is SALGA able to bring to the table? I mean, you've highlighted and you seem to understand what most of the problems are. And then in the presentation today, you essentially touched on the things that you do, and it seems like advocacy, etc. But I think if I read your presentation, you would agree we're not in a business as usual situation. And what you presented to us today is your business as usual approach with these things. What is it that SALGA could do that is not business as usual, that can change the outcomes? Because I think we've heard it a few times, that Einstein saying about if you do the same thing, then you expect a different outcome. Can you maybe give us a view of what are the different things you could do to ensure financial sustainability, etc., in the municipalities, for example? Thanks, Chief.
Thank you, Mr. Fuller. Mr. Mkis. Thank you, Chairperson, and thank you for the presentation. Noting the other comments from my colleague, I'm just going to have one question, which is the issue of middlemen that has been raised, particularly from the end user perspective, as to what is the role there of the municipalities and how you gonna cap that, because it's adding to the misery.
May I ask the question to
The question here is there's been a complaint that has come from the end users regarding the issue of affordability, stating that there is a tariff by ESCOM and an additional tariff by municipalities, and then there are middlemen such that they end up paying. Some will say that it's 15%, but it will end up being 30% for them. So if you can just clarify your understanding of that portion and how you're going to get any misuse around that.
Mr. Sant?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Ngit. So in one of your slides, you state that you support municipalities who are exploring other sources of energy. Now, whilst I sympathize with your position, because you sort of like, on the one hand, your members are customers to ESCOM, but they also are suppliers to consumers out there. Now, my question really is the position that you are taking. One, don't you think that it's actually then exacerbating the challenge that we're trying to deal with? But secondly, since we're dealing with the MYPD, which is forward-looking, do you have complete information in terms of your members that are actually exploring these alternatives? Because what we have from ESCOM, it's like it's going to be, there's no negative growth, as it were, going into the future. So I think that information will help us, but also your own customers, because you also indicate that you have certain large customers that are also going off grid. I think that holistic information will also help us to then balance with what ESCOM is claiming is going to be the situation moving forward. So please, if you can give us that information if you have it. And then your proposal around performance-based regulation, I'm not quite too sure, because on the one hand you're saying there's nothing wrong with the regulatory framework, but then you're saying we should be moving to performance-based regulation. So I don't know how you see this playing out. Do you see performance-based regulation being part and parcel of the current regulatory regime, or are you foreseeing a situation where we phase out the current methodology and come up with a new sort of regime? If you could please clarify. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson and members, and thank you for the questions. I'm going to try and save time and be straight to the point. To CEO, yes, we trust Nersa to do the right thing, and we know that us not supporting the application doesn't mean that it's not going to fly. I mean, it doesn't mean it's going to fly. This is why we say we trust Nersa to do its job, especially on prudence tests and analyzing the real, cost that ESCOM needs to recoup. So at this point in time, we think this is a bit above board for the customer, so we trust the regulator to do its mandate on that. What do we bring on the table around the situation that is currently happening? I think we have started in March last year to host a summit that was looking at the landscape of the energy industry going forward. Because as we are standing here, we're not saying municipalities are perfect. We know that there are problems and deep problems in municipalities. And this is why we hosted that summit that needs to actually gather everyone from the industry to discuss what would be the future of the industry, looking at this business unusual situation that we have. And that summit has a report and recommendations that it has. It actually makes a lot of progressive recommendations about the future of the industry, even the future of the municipalities themselves, because we believe that some municipalities, as they are, they're not going to be sustainable. Maybe even for the function of electricity, we need to relook at how that kind of service should be provided to the customer, because we know that there are issues of skills in municipalities, mostly the small ones that are owning ESCOM. There are issues of capacity and the infrastructure aging and dilapidated. So we created, or we hosted a conversation that needs all government stakeholders, including the Department of Energy, including COGTA, including the Infrastructure Supports Agency, to look at all these issues that we are trying to resolve with the REITs that are still haunting us to this day. Look at how we can actually start the process again. Maybe we don't have to have a bill around the restructuring, but what can we do, in order for us to get to that point where we are revisiting how the industry looks like? Because at this point in time, we all agreed that it's not sustainable. What we are bringing to the table is a conversation with government through that summit for government to look at its policies as they stand now, what should be reviewed, and what are kind of things that needs to be implemented to bring efficiencies in the industry at this point in time. Then there was a question around the complaint from end users about middlemen. I understood this as resellers. Is that what the question is?
No, it's a combination, and all that other people were saying is to remove middlemen, including the municipalities. So I think it's just the general approach to that question.
Okay. No, thank you for that. I think, this is my view. The municipalities themselves are monopolies. ESCOM is also a monopoly. We need to look at the future of how this should look like in terms of the structure, especially of the distribution industry. Because since the municipalities have the constitutional power over electricity regulation, it gives them the powers to be the monopoly, and it's actually it doesn't sit well with the customer, because the customer becomes captive and has to take everything, even a very, I almost say a crappy service, sorry about that, but or a bad service sometimes, because the customer is captive and cannot do anything. So my view around revisiting the whole structure is not to look at ESCOM. It's not because I want to make a career out of ESCOM. I look at the industry as it is, the whole industry. The municipalities themselves need restructuring. It's bad. In terms of the alternative of energy, I think it's already in the media which municipalities, the bigger ones, the metros that are pursuing other alternatives. I think the host municipality right now, Ethekwini, is already doing some projects, some demonstration projects around alternatives, and also looking at the purchasing to IPPs, obviously.
So I help Mr. Ngidi and get straight to the point on the question.
Thank you, Chairperson. I think we'll provide the information as we have this discussion with the regulator. Exacerbating the challenge, there is a business unusual situation that we have, but we have to think about business unusual solutions to that. We cannot say because it's business unusual, then let's take the pain. I don't think that's our position as well. Performance regulation, what we are saying here is that the MYPD itself does have that component, but it looks at quality of service only. Maybe we can look at the MYPD itself. how can it be beefed up to look at other aspects of the ESCOM operation in terms of performance, to get ESCOM accountable with the cost that it bears on its operations. Thanks, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ngidi, for the responses, and perhaps in 7 days, if you could also provide us with the information or evidence relating to the point you made earlier that there are customers connected to the grid but do not buy electricity due to unaffordability. Can you give us some information on that in the next 7 days? Thank you for your time. All right, we're moving on to the next presenter, and the next presenter is from Pietermaritzburg Chamber of Business. I've got the name of Melanie Venice. Good afternoon, Ms. Venice. All right, may you please raise your right hand? Do you solemnly declare that the facts you're going to provide before this panel will be the truth and the whole truth?
Yes, I do.
Please state your name and your position at Pietermaritzburg Chamber of Business.
Certainly, my name is Melanie Vaness. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of the Pietermaritzburg Chamber of Business.
You may start with your presentation, ma'am.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Just by way of introduction, a very quick one. The Pietermaritzburg Chamber is the third largest chamber in the country. We represent businesses across sectors, and we are an amalgamation of 3 organizations some time ago, so we're a representative organization. There's a bit of a snapshot. We've done some salient metrics over the last 11 years, and the ones that I particularly want you to pay attention to is the net debt cost escalation, the net finance cost escalation, what's happened to profits, and particularly on the employee side. I want to look at the Eskom basis for the application, MYPD 4. Key elements of allowed revenue. The Electricity Regulation Act actually talks about the fact that you must enable an efficient licensee full costs of its licensed activities. With a qualified audit and questions about its going concern status, with several of Eskom's top executives being asked to appear before the Judicial Commission of Inquiry into State Capture, energy experts speculating that over 500 billion has been lost to corruption in the last 10 years, the current state of our electricity infrastructure and the load shedding that has been imposed on the citizens and businesses of this country alike, it would be really remiss of me not to ask the question concerning the efficiency of Eskom. There's no private sector, business or shareholders that would ever tolerate results like this. Decreasing sales, bloated staffing, ballooning debt, over 1,000% in 10 years, and financial losses. Quite honestly, it's shameful, and it is embarrassing for every South African. Eskom cannot, in its current state, be considered an efficient licensee, and so I must start on this basis by questioning whether this is even a valid application. They talk about the recovery of efficient costs, primary energy costs, their own generation and IPPs and imports. Coal procurement practices are questionable. There's reports of emergency procurement, bypassing tender regulations, paying inflated prices, eroding of stockpiles, supply issues, quality of supply issues, incurring unnecessary transport costs. So my question is, what percentage of these costs are actually efficient costs? Do we even know? We object in the strongest terms to the indefensible IPP contracts. This is expensive energy that Eskom must buy when it's available, regardless of whether or not we need it. According to the calculations by the energy team at Port Elizabeth Chamber, it's 13% more expensive than self-generation. So if Eskom has the capacity, what is the justification for the IPP energy at 13% more? We've got to take this energy when it's available, it can't be stored, and we must pay more for it when we can generate it ourselves. So how does that make sense? These contracts have got to be investigated, terminated, or renegotiated. The expenditure in both these cases cannot possibly be considered to have been efficiently incurred. We talk about value for money. Are we getting value for money in either of these instances? Recovery efficient costs, operating costs. The majority of the operating costs are attributable to employee costs. The World Bank calculated that Eskom needed a workforce of 14,244 which means that there are more than 30,000 too many staff members employed at Eskom. This was a point that I raised at a previous hearing. The policy of shedding staff by natural attrition under these circumstances is absolutely unacceptable. I'm sorry. And as far as we're concerned, Eskom should only be entitled to recover the salaries that are attributable to the recommended number of staff for their customer base. That staffing is efficiently employed, not the staffing bill that we currently sit with. The average cost per employee at Eskom, I believe, according to a calculation and a study, was 708,000 in 2018-2019. Wow. So if you calculate the excessive salary spend, it's quite significant, you can see for yourselves. And it's estimated that if there was retrenchment of 30,000 jobs in Eskom, this would possibly create a knock-on effect of 3 million jobs in the private sector. When you're loading the expenses at an entity that forces undesirable costing on an entire economy, the results are catastrophic. Talk about the recovery of efficient costs, operating costs. Eskom say that they've made every effort to control operating costs, is what's in the application. And your financial statements cite fiduciary duty breaches, irregular contracts, providing of guarantees for private enterprises. There's even evidently overpriced tea contracts. So my question is how? How have they made every effort to control operating expenditure? Talk about cost-reflective tariffs. That's what they're asking for, but the expenses are clearly inflated and therefore inefficient, and they shouldn't be allowed to recover them in full. The submission refers to elements outside of Eskom's operational control, debt service costs and IPP costs. I'm astounded. What are we saying? That they can't control their borrowings or their debt levels, and they're not responsible for the contracts that they sign. So why are we needing all these executives? Why are we paying them? There's no accountability. I believe at the top end there used to be 100 executives on it. Is it an E level or F level? Now there's 600. Earning a reasonable return on assets. Due to inadequate capacity and financial limitations, midlife refurbishment and plant maintenance hasn't been performed, and there's been a decline in plant availability. So what have our 30,000 extra people been doing? There's massive overspending on capital projects, which is totally unacceptable. It's inefficient and imprudently incurred costs, and they should be disallowed. The revaluation of the regulatory asset base is unacceptable. We believe the assets are now substantially overstated. While this may make the balance sheet look a little bit more attractive, it's unrealistic and it's punitive for consumers. The phasing in approach does not in any way make this more palatable. Eskom's reference in the application to making sacrifices in the interests of the economy would be laughable if it wasn't that insulting. Revenue recovery. Cost-reflective revenue that covers efficient and prudent costs and that allows a reasonable return that matches the debt service commitments. That's what's being asked for. We have two problems with this. I think we've established that a significant percentage of the costs are neither efficient nor prudent. Debt has grown to 419 billion, and we are servicing long-term capital requirements with short-term loans. The capital spend program is unjustified in the context of falling demand. The debt levels, in my opinion, are reckless and irresponsible, and it doesn't sound like they can be fully justified from an operational perspective. The question that all of us have to ask, because trust levels are at an absolute low, are we paying interest on maladministration and on corruption? Electricity price impact. Eskom maintains that consumers are have had below inflation increases in recent prior years. That is ludicrous. Between 2008 and 2013, electricity prices more than doubled in real terms, rising by a cumulative 114%. For the last period so far, we've had CPI plus 2%. A phased smooth increase of 15% per annum is now proposed for MYPD4. Compounded, that is 52% more in 3 years, in addition to the clawbacks through the RCA process. This is ridiculous. In the current economic context, it's not viable, and it is absolutely unaffordable. The World Bank says South Africa's anticipated growth rate for 2019 is 1.3%. And we're expected to face additional increases of 15%. How will any business absorb that into their expenditure? when they can't add any more than 1% to their sales. They can't pass it on. We set up the coalface and we watch every day huge businesses under pressure, huge businesses that are operating as efficiently as they can in a competitive space, closing down. To impose this level of increase on a really critical element of their expenditure is absolutely and utterly unforgivable. They can't pass it on, and jobs will be lost. Foreign investors are hesitant to invest further in view of the political policy and economic uncertainty, so global companies are very unlikely to prop up their ailing divisions in South Africa. They're more likely to relocate to other more conducive environments. In fact, we're seeing it elsewhere in Africa. The investment isn't coming here. It's going to places like Rwanda. It is simply not affordable, and we can't afford to make ourselves more unattractive from an investment perspective. Increases of this level will put a number of businesses out of business. The proposed increase is not fiscally responsible, and it's also unsustainable from an Eskom perspective. By Eskom's own admission, their sales are decreasing annually, and a lot of this has been self-inflicted, I'm afraid to say, by unreasonable price hikes and load shedding. Businesses have invested in alternative energy, like solar plants, to ensure security of supply and to mitigate the costs. I've been helping a number of our large industrialists put in solar over the last few years, and they're in their second or third phase of implementing big solar to mitigate the costs. The price elasticity of electricity demand was considered fairly inelastic when price hikes were reasonable, but when the price of electricity in real terms started to rise sharply post-2007, price elasticity of demand was significant and negative. For every 1% increase in price, you saw between 0.2 and 0.5% decrease in electricity demand. That was out of the Deloitte's study that was prepared for Eskom. I mean, that is looking at the entire economy as a whole, but there's significant sectors that are power-hungry sectors that would be more sensitive to changes in price. And those are the sectors where you're seeing that decline, which more directly affects Eskom's sales. So Eskom's actions have significantly contributed to the decreased demand, and the more they put unrealistic tariff prices in place, the fewer customers Eskom will have in the future. The compound effect of these kinds of increases will negatively impact growth, and there's a strong correlation between GDP growth and electricity sales in South Africa. It's the same Deloitte study. For every 1% increase in GDP, there's a 1% rise in electricity demand. We grow, so does demand for electricity. You create a situation where our growth rate is declining, electricity sales will decline. So it's nonsensical to exacerbate this with exorbitant tariff increases. Eskom is eroding its own customer base by its actions, and this is self-defeating. So our conclusion on the NYPD, I've been listening to the news over the last while, and I have to ask, how can Eskom's balance sheet problems be our shared responsibility to resolve? Sorry, Eskom, your apology is not accepted. You've created this problem, presumably with the blessing of your shareholder, and between you, you need to sort it out. The business community cannot and will not fund inefficiency and corruption. Unlike you, we run a tight ship because we're forced to compete. Get your house in order before you look at us. You cannot expect us to mock with that. In terms of what it means from our perspective, it means restructuring the organization, and unfortunately it means massive retrenchment. It means the halting of new build programs until demand justifies that build. It means the interrogation of coal contracts, cancellation, freezing, and or renegotiation of IPP contracts. We're not against renewable energy, but the cost must make sense. And any of these projects should be delayed until capacity is required and pricing equals self-generation costs. Eskom tariffs should be limited, in our opinion, until there's been a full forensic investigation and appropriate costs have been established. The guilty have been charged, and the wheel set in motion to recover the South African citizens' lost billions, and the SA is restructured and operating efficiently. Any increase that is above inflation in any period is rejected by business because it can't be justified and it's unaffordable. It is economically unviable for the country and for Eskom. And I just want to talk briefly about the RCA application, the Year 5 application. We'll go through our introduction again, but I just wanted to say, look at the basis on which the application is being made. Revenue variance.
Ma'am, I'm granting you 5 more minutes.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Lower sales volumes, downturn in the economy and commodity price changes are a reason that Eskom was given. The downturn in the economy and commodity price changes did undoubtedly contribute, so there's a strong correlation between GDP growth and electricity, as we said before. But high tariffs are negatively impacting growth and they're exacerbating the situation. As is load shedding. Mining and industry are power intensive, so high electricity tariffs added significantly to the cost pressures that led to closures. To a degree, this is self-inflicted. You can't simply adjust for lost revenue during load shedding. Load shedding was immensely destructive, and it's something that needs to be revisited because it doesn't make sense from an industry or from a mining point of view to take plants down for a short period of time and to repower them. I mean, we offered over a long time to be able to give the capacity that you need. If you need 5 or 10%, why are you asking for 100? That doesn't make any sense at all. So higher tariffs are absolutely, unequivocally self-defeating. Revenue variance, lower sales volumes, and low investor confidence. High tariffs, poor management of SOEs, and reports of corruption erode investor confidence. Some responsibility must be borne by Eskom for this. Revenue variances, lower sales volumes, decrease in reliance on Eskom. So a lot of this, as I've said previously, was self-inflicted by unreasonable price hikes and load shedding. Businesses have found alternative forms of energy to invest in and to ensure their security of supply and to mitigate costs. We spoke about the price elasticity, and that's applicable in this instance too. So Eskom have contributed to the decreased demand, and that the more that you put unrealistic price hikes in place, the fewer customers Eskom will have, and the less sustainable it becomes. Recovery of fixed costs, debt and interest repayment. We've spoken about the fact that debt has ballooned to 419 billion, and that we're servicing long-term capital requirements for short-term loans. The debt levels are reckless, we've said it, irresponsible. I don't think they can all be operationally justified. And with all these reports of inefficiency, maladministration and corruption, who is to say what percentage of these debts have been prudently incurred and properly structured? They need to be interrogated before there is any recovery. Energy and IPP contracts, we've spoken at length about those. We've said the coal procurement practices are questionable. All these things that are happening, they need to be interrogated. A forensic investigation needs to be undertaken to interrogate the costs and associated contracts to determine what percentage of the costs have been prudently and efficiently incurred, and only these should be permitted. The IPP contracts also, on a take or pay basis, need to be interrogated for prudency. It makes no sense to buy in energy, as we've spoken about before. In previous years, it's been allowed because there's a contract in place. The question is, why do we even have the contract? It doesn't make sense. We need to have that interrogated. I don't think that Eskom should be permitted to recover anything until there's been a full forensic investigation that clearly ascertains what portion of the amounts being claimed through the clearing account process have been prudently and efficiently incurred. The private sector cannot afford to fund inefficiency, maladministration and corruption, and it shouldn't be expected to. If this burden is imposed on us, I can assure you that jobs will be lost. And if this is permitted, we are knowingly contributing to the destruction of Eskom and our economy and negatively affecting the lives of every South African now and into the future. We can't afford to bail Eskom out in the short term at the expense of future South Africa. Thank you.
Very much. If you have the piece of paper, from any members of the panel would like to get clarity in your questions. Mr. Police, do you have any question?
Thanks, Chair. I just want to refer to your presentation on the MYPD application. I don't know what the slide number was, but you indicated that there are a number of your members that have moved or installed solar capacity. I think what would be helpful for us is to know, I don't know if there's categories or if it's your total member base, so what is the demand or consumption of that base, and then how much of that over the last year or 5 has moved towards solar, given the way electricity prices have gone. And then the other question I have is, I mean, from what I can see, most of your members still run on electricity from the grid, pretty much. And Eskom's indicated they need us to consider this, so that they acknowledge a number of these items you've raised, but they need the space to be able to work on them, given their legacy problems. Are you saying that we shouldn't allow them that space? It's like a hard sell, I think you said they got sorted out yourself. Because given that most of your members still run on the grid, there may be other implications for them should it adversely affect Eskom's ability to operate.
Thank you, Mr. Abele, for the question. Mr. Mkhize, any specific question?
Thank you, Chairperson, and thanks for the presentation. From my side, just one question. Since we've got a regulatory framework in place, we need to follow that and do the requisite socio-economic impact analysis. It would greatly assisted us if you had provided information as far as the impact of the application, the likely impact of the approval of this application as is on the economics, on the financial viability of businesses that are part of the chamber, and to provide information like the percentage of alternative energy that has penetrated in terms of the businesses that are in the chambers, say for example, that would assist also in terms of forecasting as to how then that will eat away in terms of the demand. Those kind of things will actually assist, and I think if you can provide that in the next 7 days, because it will help in terms of the analysis as now a business chamber, let alone what has come us to do. Yeah.
Mr. Sai.
Thank you, Chair. I just have one question, and that is, are you in a position to support your assertion that the revaluation of the RAB as it currently stands is not justified? In other words, what assets or what aspects of the RAB do you think should be disallowed? Thank you.
Certainly, thank you. Question 1 and question 3 seem to be quite similar.
I'm sure you're not expecting any questions from the chairperson. I'm part of the panel as well.
Sure, sorry.
Okay. Ma'am, we would like you to assist a great deal. I think also my questions are related to your statement about the overstatement of the assets. If you could give us information as to, first of all, maybe clarify what basis are you saying that the assets are overstated? I think if you could provide us information. What is included, maybe just to unpack the question, what is included in the RAB which should not be allowed? The analysis. Do you think Eskom has taken into consideration 2 critical aspects when they were evaluating the RAB? 2 of those critical aspects: efficiency standard, the efficiency of the assets that are going to perform the service. Number 2, the performance of those assets, if you look backwards and also going forward, because I think that will assist both applications for the RCA and also looking now into the MYPD4. So if we're looking at the MYPD4 and look at the RAB as it stands, what has been included in the RAB, and whether these assets that they say they can perform as good as new assets, do you think that they have taken the proper standards and measure the proper standards, that is performance measure as well as efficiency measure? Can you assist us with an analysis on that and test what Eskom has done? I think that's a critical analysis that Nersa must also do on those assets. And then the other thing that we would like you to then, after that analysis, if you could then indicate what you believe should be disallowed or should not be admitted in the RAB And I think that also the past presentations of ESCOM will assist in terms of some of the plans and the performance of those plans. The other aspect of the analysis that we would like you to assist us with, ESCOM has already admitted that the energy availability factor has deteriorated. It was at some point, I think last year, a few months ago, last year, it was sitting at 78%. In fact, in this specific application, ESCOM says they will perform at, or they will meet 78%. Right now, ESCOM has admitted that it has dropped to 63%. So if you now take this and look at the RAB, how they evaluated the RAB, looking into the efficiency and the performance of those assets, can you give us an indication? We will also do our own, but it is also important that we get facts from various stakeholders. That is the kind of analysis we will embark on as Nersa as well. Now, the other question now, after you've taken all of these factors into consideration with regards to the RAB, do you think ESCOM should be compensated at the level they've indicated for its fixed assets that already or that are performing dismally? Because that's what they are asking. They say, here's our RAB, we've got these assets, they are fixed, we must pay them. But these assets are revalued as if they are new assets, as if some expenditure has been incurred. Remember, they also admitted that the expenditure that they ought to have incurred in terms of refurbishment, in terms of replacing equipment, they have not done. They failed. So that expenditure that could have assisted these assets to perform better, they have not done. Yet they come and say, well, these assets are as great as new assets. But even new assets, there are defects. So even if they were to put a standard to say it's a new asset, it's going to perform better, but those assets already showed to them that they are failing. So how do you then take all of that and look at how bloated the asset is and how they value those assets? So this is all the critical aspects of evaluating the RAB, which would like business to also take the opportunity to analyze and also provide facts to Nersa. Thank you very much.
Certainly, thank you. Question 1 and 3 were quite similar in that they refer to the number of our members and what parts of our membership have gone over and employed alternative forms of energy. I will do a little bit of analysis for you, but majority of it is industry. And new build and retail. When the new true retail wings have gone up, they've put in significant amounts of solar. We're talking about the adverse effect. You know, if you look at things from the business perspective, we've had poor quality and no security of supply and high tariffs for some time. If those three things are added together, we've had a triple whammy. In an economy that's barely growing, we are under the most enormous pressure to compete. And with our competitors in countries that don't have the same kind of pressure, that aren't as long-haul destinations as we are. So the business sector is under the most enormous pressure. We cannot be expected to bail Eskom out of this mess. It's not practical. We've said beforehand, it's like SOEs operate in some kind of protected bubble. There's no enterprise that would be allowed to get away with what's happening here at Eskom. Decisions have got to be made. You can't say we're going to wait for natural attrition. That's nonsense. If you're that bloated staff-wise, you've got to take a decision and you've got to retrench. You've got to start looking at interrogating those line items and finding where costs can actually be cut. You cannot pad everything. How can we even have over too much money paid for tea contracts? It's ridiculous. Every single one of those line items needs to be treated as if this was a competitive business. And if it cannot actually be competitive, then competition is something that needs to be considered. Because I don't think that this bubble is healthy for South Africa. It cannot be allowed to be tolerated. We don't, the business sector do not have the capacity to bail Eskom out of this mess. And once you put these tariffs in place, they don't go down. So the compound effect into future years is horrific. So, you know, I think that there's got to be some sort of temporary solution. It needs to be something that's negotiated between the shareholder and Eskom to sort out the mess. That we should look at what we need as competitive rates as a country to still make us attractive for business to operate in. Because if you look at our unemployment levels, we can't afford for those unemployment levels to go any higher. And it's not in government that we need to be creating jobs. The jobs need to be created in the private sector. And one organisation can, that number of extra people impacts a whole economy of businesses. They all get put under pressure and can't employ. That doesn't make sense. In terms of the assets, we will absolutely, with the greatest of pleasure, put something together. There is no way that you can say that assets that are performing at 63% can be considered as new on your asset register. That's ridiculous. Our understanding what's happening in the technical space is that we're borrowing from one to repair another, and that's sort of limping along. I mean, you can't have that kind of thing and say that each of those assets is new and needs to be valued at top rand value. That's unacceptable. So we will certainly put it together. In terms of efficiency and performance, those are critical elements of determining the useful life of assets and what value they should have in the books. And so that will be interrogated. We will certainly provide you with that, as well as an analysis of what bizarre 15% per annum would do to our economy. I can pretty much tell you it will obliterate most of my businesses, but we'll do an analysis and see that as well. Thank you very much.
That's all of them. As you go to do the assessment on the economy, I think it's always critical because the macroeconomic is sometimes informed by the microeconomic challenges. So if you could look into your sector first, what it will do to your sector, to the members of the chamber. Firstly, in terms of the economic impact. But the point that I also missed in my request is the price sensitivity analysis, which is critical for your sector. So if you can check with your members, check then you know, even if you go to take 15%, based on the price that is there right now, including of the additional increase that is going to be implemented in April, to run all of those scenarios. So that with all the sectors, I think that's what we're also going to request from the other sectors, so that they run the price sensitivity analysis in respect of the current price, what they've done in response to increases. Have they reduced their consumption now with the subsequent increases, 15% as well as maybe the 4% in April? What is the reaction? That's what we are interested in, the response and the reaction of customers in terms of their volumes that they will buy. So if you could do that and give us the factors and send it to Nersa, all the sectors will be requested to do so, so that they assist the quality of the analysis of price sensitivity.
With pleasure.
Thank you very much, ma'am, for your time. All right, we're going to take one more presenter before we break for lunch. We're going to call upon Mr. Vusi from Ubunyebama Hostel. Nisekezele kancane so that sizokwazi ukuzwa i-presentation yaka Mnumzana uZweli. May you please raise your right hand? Uyafunga kwaye uzibophelele okubana ubungqino zakuthi uthi thaqa phambi kwale panel namhlanje iza kube iyinyaniso nenyaniso epheleleyo?
Yebo ma'am.
Alright, ngicela utsho igama lakho kwakhona for the record, usichazele ke nesikhundla sakho kubunye amahostel.
Ngubusane wakwazweni, ngusihlalo wobunye bamahostel ala eThekwini.
Alright, ngicela uqale ngepresentation yakho.
Ndiyabulela mina. Bonke nepanela yonke nabo bonke abantu. Bonke nestaff sakwa Nersa. Bonke nani bantu bakwa Eskom. Ngisincedile. Bantu bakwa Eskom ngiyabonga ngokuthi nisibethe singabantu abahluphekile. Nisibethe nisihlanza noNgqonkulu. Namhlanje noNgqonkulu nabahluphekayo sikhuluma izwi elilodwa ukuthi angikahle usicindezela Eskom. Isicelo sethu la sisicelo kuNersa kakhulukazi njengamahostel. Ma'am, ngizozama ukudweba isithombe emqondweni wakho ngoba ngibonile ngathi una wazi ukumamela. Izinto nje ezine esizicelayo. Lapha eSouth Africa xa ungeneliseki ku-Standard Bank uyesuka uye kwa-FNB. Uma ungesuke la ungenelisekile uyaya nakwa-ABSA. Lokho kwenza ukuthi kwa-Eskom yena uyindlalifa yethu. Thina sililifa ku-Eskom. Sithanda singathandi u-Eskom ufuna ukusigqilaza. Uyoyeka nini? Masibuka kuma-television recently overseas, even nalapha e-Africa, nala eMoy River recently, abantu abahluphekileyo xa sebekhathele kobonakala ukuhlala. La eMoy River nekhala ngo-21 million okahlelwe ngabantu abahluphekile, kodwa kuqala nakuhlelelwa ukuthi oNgqonkulu mabayeke uqasha abantu bangaphandle, mawubhekwe thina sihluphekayo bala eSouth Africa kuqalwe ngani. Nina Eskom nisicindezela ngenkani ngoba aninayo umuntu enibanga naye, abanamba. Siyacela ke nani ukuthi masingaqali esihloko ngokuthi ngenyuselelo and baneskill sokuza namagraph amnandi isingisi esihlala mnandi kanti sinobuqili. Siyabacela abantu ba-Eskom singamahostela ma'am ukuthi mabe bawuziklina kwi-commission kaZondo kuqala. Masibuka bona nongena echaphaza simbone engenachaphaza simbona ekuchaphazeleka ukuthi lo endakamkhama nje imali zabahluphekayo. Lo simbone ehlupheke hamba ngale moto nje asisamboni oklini. Ake niqale kwi-commission kaZondo kuqala nizikline simbone lapho. Okwesibili, ma'am, ngomhla 16 lapha kwabakhutha sishonelwe ngumuntu eshoniswa nje ngendaba yekhandlela alale lilayitile, umama no-85 years. Ngeke sithi umasipala umsulwa, ngeke sithi u-Eskom umsulwa. Sangcwaba isalukazi esidala sikaNkulunkulu ngendaba kagesi. Esaba ukuthi ulungelo lethu. Xa ngisuka apha ngigoduka noma ungaya kwaNongoma noma ungaya eShowe noma ungaya ngapha ngasekhaya uwele uye ngapha. Ufika uthenge ugesi wa-Eskom. Xa ufika apha eThekwini uzofika uthenge kumasipala. Into esiyenzile thina njengamahostela ma'am nephanele yakho, sithathe lo middleman Durban saya naye kumanye amahostela iji wamasho. Sathi bukani abantu indlela abahleli ngayo, ake ngenze indlela abantu basho ngomlomo yabo emva basuka u-public protector. Sithi bukani laba bantu bafuna ugesi ukuziphilisa komsebenzi. Besiye ngo-October nanamhlanje bayasibalekela just ukulungisela laba bantu. Kuzokhala ukuthi bakunyusa abantu aba-honest abakhokhela ugesi ukuthi mabanyuse. Kukho abantu abangafuna ukusebenza. Ngiyavumelana nowabasalga bethu nalapha kubonile khona. Ngiyavumelana naye. Enye into esicelisayo esicela mina nifundileyo niyibhekisise about 16 kilometers, I mean about 8 to 10 kilometers. We are at Springfield Park, Zotola Marco. Panel the solar. Yonke ilokuzana yakho ungeze usebenzisa khona. Hayi ngawutsika nje. Ngosala ngithetha. Uma ngabe kusetshenziswa zonke iniko umuntu inganiko uEscom. Njengoba ngenza isilinganiso ngoStandard Bank namanye ama-bank ngoba usidla ilifa ngenkani. Akufanele la eSouth Africa side sifane naseZimbabwe. Siwashisela ama-ofisa la eseduze kwethu. Akufanele size sidestroye le infrastructure sokuthiwa ikhona ngoba sesikhathele ukunbekezelela. Kodwa musani ukusiphusha ngenkani. Musani ukusiphusha ngenkani ngoba nisithi ninemali ninesingisi nizoza nawo wonke amagrafu la. Ngoba kusifike la manje singasakwazi ukuhlehla ngasemuva. Okugcina masingaphinde sixoxe ngokuthi laba bantu bafuna thina njengamahostela sithe maseyibuka sesibuka nalezi zinto sesizichazile zakwamaphutha nezakwamasho sesizibeke nabo-public protector lezi zinto. Sitheka sizibuka sibuka nano-15 ukuthi hayi labantu basadlala i-negotiating skills la. Njengoba bafuna u-15% nje bafuna into ezakwa-8%, bayazi banizokumanesa nemhlende la izansi. Still ngisazozokuhlala la xa nibavunele. Thina-ke nobe seningasekho thina. Sobe sesixabana nabo. Bafuna u-8% kodwa bawufuna ngenye indlela bawubiza nje ngo-15% to 20%. Bayazi bazothi mawehla bazokuconvince ngalamagrafu amaningi. Siyacela-ke ukuthi makuxoxwa ukuthi kubani omunye undlalifa yethu esingathi masingeneli ngu-Eskom siye kuyona in future. Ubani, who's the next person? Osingathi we are not here ngu-Eskom siya la namhlanje awusiprovide ngogesi la eSouth Africa. Ngoba uNkulunkulu usinikiwe amandla. Okwesibili, uthe mayeqala isikhulumi sakwa-Eskom uba amadlebana bengekho sesikelekile sathi umnotho wenza uzwi kahle. Ma ungenzi kahle kusho khona besho la kuzodilizwa abantu. Lo muntu odilizwa wakho ugesi ophezulu awuyiki sense lo, it doesn't make sense. Urestrictiwe lo muntu but makakhokhe futhi plus minus 7%. Ayizona okugcina nepanela yakho ake sibukele la kuthiwa kundiwa khona amalafu. Ake sibukele izimpilo ezi-affectwa ngabantu abakule ndawo ndiwa kuba amalafu. Bake bafike yini babizwe ukuthi Eskom naba abantu. Eskom naba abantu nani nike nizizwele indlela nabaphila ngayo. Singalihlanganisela thina abanye balobo bantu. Singaorganizela masinganayo le mali ehlala amaphakethe sinikwe thina si-organize nje amabhasi noba u-4. Labo bantu bazozikhulumela indlela abathinteka ngayo ney'mpilo zabo. Ngicele futhi abantu abashayiwe okanye odokotela bazokunika impilo e-affectwa ngezimali ekukhulunywa ngazo. Ilezo sizathu-ke senza isicelo kumina ukuthi uma ngabe sithi umoya unjani unga-affecta abantu basebenzisa umoya. Masebenzisa ilanga singa-affecteka abantu. Singabizwa ngubani lemali engaka. Masisicabanga lezi zinto ezisuke kwa-Eskom ngoba masina kwa-Eskom sisebakwazi ukuthi bangcolile makabaye kwi-Zondo Commission. Mazifune omunye umuntu ozokaziphathe esicabanga ukuthi uzoba msulwa naye bese sixakile esibhedlela futhi sizomsusa ngendlela esibasusa ngayo namanye. Singaze silinganise amanye amazwe. Ngicela ukuphela lapho ungazongiqonda isikhathi.
Ngiyabulela futhi ngobetha komuhle. Ngoba kusiyana kakhulu ixesha. Ngicela ukubuza bana i-members epanel ninawona imibuzo. Chris, no question. Siyabulela kakhulu Datumzweni ke presentation yakho. Sithathela ingqalelo ke nezinye izinto owazikhankanya apha. Nathi ke singoNersa sifuna ukuyazi nathi sizaphela sixoxa uba sisimamele isicelo. Isicelo sithi sikhale sithi jonga ubungqina obuthe qhaqa phambi kwakho. Then ke ngokuthathe isigqibo. Funeke ke nijonge nalento yokubana esi sicelo siphambi kwethu sisicelo esiya phambili sikhona esiya kuthiwa hayi ku enithini namhlanje kudliwe imali ngorhwaphilizo yaqonda sekudlulile ngosisiya kuphambili ke ku-2020 uthi ke ku-Eskom sifuna imali ukuba sikwazi ukukhiqiza ugesi ngoke ukubalazo ke mose nezinye assets ezibakhe samkhiqiza ngalo ugesi ngoba funeke si-employ abantu noba kuncane noba kungakanani ngoba abantu fanele bekhona bakhiqiza ugesi ngoba ke i-economy ne-country izakufuna kukho ke lokho esikujongile sithi ke ngoku ezona ndleko esicinga uba zizo ezi-reasonable nezi-legal ke ezingengezorhwaphilizo ingaba zeziphi andiwubuzi lo mbuzo kuwe ndiyawucacisela kuwo wonke ubani ukuthi ubani ayazi ukuthi ayikho ibhizinesi ezawuranwa at zero cost siyakuzwa konke okunye okukhalazwayo asitsho nokuthi sizawusubmitha or sizawuthatha isigqibo esithini but kodwa sifuna nje ba-understande ukubana esi sicelo siphambi kwethu sijolise phambili ukuthi phambili nako Eskom afuneka kuproduce uthi ufuna imali ukuthi akwazi ukukhiqiza ugesi. Siyabulela tata.
Ngiyabonga mama. Kodwa basale u7%.
Ngoku ndibogqibelisayo uthetha ndimi inkosi xa sendimapha emphethihlangu. Thank you very much. This is the last speaker before lunch, but we're going to come back here and we're going to take a 30 minutes lunch break. The Nersa team will show you where you're going to have lunch. Thank you.